All right, let's get right into it. Imagine a place that throws everything you learned in history class right out the window. High on a dusty hilltop in Turkey, there's a structure, a temple really, that by all accounts just shouldn't be there. It's called Göbekli Tepe. And what it tells us about our own past is so radical, it forces us to rethink the very definition of civilization.
You know the story we were all taught, right? It's a neat, tidy sequence. First, we invented farming. Then, we settled down in villages. Those villages grew into cities. And only then, once we were comfortable and well-fed, do we have the luxury of building big temples and developing complex religion. Well, what they found at Göbekli Tepe completely shatters that timeline. It takes that whole idea and flips it completely on its head. This isn't just a new chapter in our history, it feels like they've found a whole new book.
So, to really get our heads around this, we're going to tackle it in 5 key parts. First, we'll talk about just how impossibly old this place is. Then, we'll get into the mind-boggling question of how it was even built. After that, we'll explore the radical religion-first theory it sparked. We'll also look at how the story is still changing with brand new discoveries. And finally, we'll confront the massive, unwritten past this place represents.
Okay, first things first, we have to truly appreciate the sheer age of this site. I mean, it's not just ancient in the way we think of Rome or Greece. This is something else entirely. It comes from a period of human history where we believed building anything on this scale was, well, flat out impossible.
Let that number sink in for a second. 11,500 years ago. That's 9,500 BC. We're talking about the dawn of what we call the Neolithic Age. The people alive back then, we thought they were just small, scattered bands of hunter-gatherers, constantly on the move, just trying to survive. They weren't supposed to be building, well, this.
And if you need a bit of perspective, think about Stonehenge. We all know Stonehenge is ancient, right? Well, Göbekli Tepe is 7,000 years older than Stonehenge. In fact, listen to this. The time that passed between the building of Göbekli Tepe and the building of Stonehenge is actually longer than the time that's passed between Stonehenge and us right now. It's just mind-bending.
On top of all that, this was all happening 6,000 years before anyone had invented writing. So everything about this place, the blueprints, the belief system, the stories, its entire purpose, it all existed only in the minds of the people who built it. It had to be passed down person to person, generation to generation, with absolutely no written records. How do you even organize a project like this without writing?
And you know, for the longest time, nobody knew what was under this hill. Locals called it Pot-Bellied Hill, and experts just kind of assumed it was an old medieval cemetery, nothing special. But then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt shows up. He takes one look at the fragments of carved stone on the surface and has this incredible moment of realization. He knew these weren't just tombstones. They were something far, far older. And in that instant, he knew he was standing on top of a discovery that would change everything.
So, what was it that Schmidt found buried under all that dirt that was so revolutionary? Well, it all comes down to the sheer, almost unbelievable scale of the construction and what it took for these prehistoric people to pull it off.
Okay, first off, this place is huge. We're talking about an area the size of 9 football fields. And using ground-penetrating radar, they've seen that there are at least 20 of these circular structures still buried. At the heart of each one are these incredible, massive, T-shaped pillars. Some are up to 6 meters tall, weighing as much as 20 tons. And these aren't just rough blocks of stone. They are covered, absolutely covered, in these beautiful, intricate carvings of animals. Foxes, snakes, vultures, and the pillars themselves, that T-shape? The thinking is that they're meant to be stylized people, like giant stone guardians or maybe even gods, all gathered together. It's just breathtaking.
Now this is where it gets really wild. Try to picture this. You have to cut a 20-ton block of limestone out of a quarry using nothing but flint hand tools. Okay, step 1. Then you have to somehow transport that massive pillar over 100 meters away. And then you have to lift it upright and place it precisely. Now here's the kicker. You have to do all of that with no wheels, no metal tools, no oxen or horses to help you pull, nothing. It was all just human power, human sweat, and incredible, incredible ingenuity.
So what does that mean? It means you can't build something like this with a small family group. You need hundreds of people, hundreds of workers, all organized, all working toward a common goal. But remember, these are supposed to be hunter-gatherers, living in tiny, nomadic groups. Getting that many people together, coordinating their efforts, feeding them, housing them, that requires a level of social organization that we just didn't think was possible for people at this point in history. This one fact, right here, is what completely breaks the old textbook model. So you have this huge puzzle, right? A structure that shouldn't exist, built by people who shouldn't have been able to organize like that. And this led the original excavator, Klaus Schmidt, to come up with a truly revolutionary idea about how and why civilization even got started.
And this is his big idea, and it's a total game changer. Schmidt basically said, we've had it backwards this whole time. We thought that first you get an organized society, and then that society builds a temple. He argued the opposite. It was the shared belief, the collective drive to build this sacred place that was the catalyst. That act of building created the complex society. The temple came first.
Here you can see the two models side by side, and it really couldn't be clearer. The old way we learned in school was farming leads to villages, which grow into cities, and then you get organized religion. But the Göbekli Tepe model just flips it. It suggests that the spark was religion, a shared spiritual idea. That idea drove people to cooperate on a massive scale. And that cooperation, well, it created new problems that needed new solutions, like agriculture.
Yeah, just think about the practicalities. It's what's called the feeding problem. If you've got hundreds of workers toiling away on this massive construction site for years, you can't just rely on finding a few berries or hunting an animal every now and then. It's just not predictable enough. You need a stable, reliable food source. And so the theory goes, the massive logistical pressure of feeding the temple builders might have been the exact push humanity needed to figure out farming, to domesticate wheat and other crops. It's an incredible thought. Our desire for God might have literally invented agriculture.
But, science never stands still. The story doesn't end with Klaus Schmidt's brilliant theory. After he sadly passed away, a new team of archaeologists took the lead, and the discoveries they're making right now are adding all sorts of new twists and turns, making the picture even more complicated. And honestly, even more interesting. And you can see here, this is a story that is actively being written. The new lead archaeologist, Lee Clare, took over in 2014. And since then, the pace has really picked up. They're finding incredible things, not just at Göbekli Tepe, but at sister sites nearby, like Karahan Tepe. They found a stunning human statue there a few years ago. And then, just in 2024, right now, they uncovered a whole new enclosure with these eerie, carved human heads. This proves Göbekli Tepe wasn't some one-off fluke. It was part of a much larger world.
So all this new evidence is starting to complicate Smith's original temple-only idea a little bit. For example, they're finding massive piles of animal bones, which suggests that huge ritual feasts were a big part of what went on here. They've also found signs of some small settlements nearby, so maybe it wasn't just a place people visited. The picture that's emerging now is less of a single isolated temple and more of an entire sacred landscape, a whole region dotted with these sites, with Göbekli Tepe possibly being the main hub, the grand cathedral of its day.
And then, you have maybe the strangest twist in this whole story. After being used for something like 1,500 years, the people who built and worshipped at Göbekli Tepe did something truly bizarre. They buried it. On purpose. I'm talking about backfilling every single one of these massive enclosures with thousands of tons of dirt and rock, perfectly preserving it. Why would you do that? Why bury your most sacred place? Was it a final, grand ritual? Were they putting the world to rest? It's one of the site's deepest, most profound mysteries.
All of this really leads us into the final and maybe the biggest part of the mystery. We're now dealing with questions that go beyond just archaeology and touch on things like mythology and the sheer scale of what we still don't know about our own past.
Okay, now here's where it gets a little bit spooky. Take a look at a map. Göbekli Tepe is located right in the heart of the Fertile Crescent, very close to the headwaters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Does that ring a bell? It's the exact same geography described in the Bible for the Garden of Eden. Now, no one's saying this is the Garden of Eden, but even Schmidt himself wondered, could our oldest myths, like the story of Eden, be a kind of faint, distorted echo, a cultural memory of a real place, a sacred hill where humanity made that epic transition from hunter-gatherers to farmers? It's a tantalizing thought. And this might be the single most staggering fact about this entire place. After all these years of digging, after all these discoveries that have completely rewritten our history books, archaeologists have uncovered less than 5% of the entire site. That's right, 95% of Göbekli Tepe is still underground, waiting. What else is down there? We can only guess.
So we end up right back where we started, but with a much deeper appreciation for the question. It's the ultimate chicken and egg problem of human history. Did our need for something spiritual, our desire to connect with the cosmos, drive us to build civilization, or was it the other way around? Did civilization come first, and only then did we invent gods? Göbekli Tepe doesn't hand us a neat answer. What it does, though, is prove that the story of us, the story of where we all come from, is infinitely more complex, more mysterious, and more incredible than we ever imagined.